still here going through a focused journey. A Tale of Courageous Strides by Kisamba Mugerwa. This book is one that you should endeavor to pick up in case you want to learn one or two. Let me not lie to you. If you want to learn a lot of things and a lot of values that you need to have. And he talked about having a tight budget at campus. As a fellow brother man, Mr. Frank, let me ask you if you could identify with him, with this statement here. On page 48, Mr. Kisamba Mugerwa, Professor Kisamba Mugerwa talks about this. He says, truthfully, beyond dancing with them, I found the issue of sustaining girlfriends an expensive venture. And it was stylish to go to places of entertainment like Delete, Odeon, and Norman cinema houses where one would spend some good money watching movies, eating, and drinking. I was operating on a very tight budget, and I could not sponsor these would-be girlfriends. So sustaining a girlfriend was not part of my programs at Macquarie University during the undergrad, during my undergrad, degree studies. What were your thoughts when you saw that? Did it ring any bells for you, or were you were the hard guys at university who never had these challenges?
Personally, it does ring a bell, and I really resonate with this. And to me, I didn't have so many girlfriends.
Not many. There are some. I know.
Let's not go down that path. The man is married, we may cause problems at home and questions.
I never allowed time really to go out and spend so much in the name of pleasing and appeasing somebody. Yes, so I know what he means to be on a tight budget, and so I was very clear, and I moved very, very strategically and clear. I didn't have a lot of time, neither did I have a lot of money to do so much in that area.
I think it goes back to the level of focus that he had as an individual. Because all his friends were socializing, all his friends were going out dancing, partying and everything. But he set aside himself and said, you know what, this is what I am focusing on. He seemed to have a motivation, which was his family and his economic standing. And he purposed for that. And one of the things that was also very interesting is how he talks about his refraining from alcohol. On page 50, and he expounds on how he refrained from it, how he saw it as a challenge, and even though he was gaining a living from it, how he still didn't even take the drink that he was making for others to consume. Betty, what would you say about him and this particular part of his life?
First of all, I want to say that for him looking at tight budget and not socializing, on the other hand, the mother was encouraging him to actually do the socializing.
I saw you itching to say that. Now that you have brought it up.
Because, I mean, it was a joy for the mother to see the son grow up. It's part of the growing up. But anyway, I think, like you said, he was focused, and he didn't want to mingle early because he knew it comes with a cost, and he didn't have the cost. And so, yes. So, and coming to what you just asked, the alcohol and not being, I think, from what I read, he says that he even tried, but the first time he did, he failed badly, and he was like, this is not for me. So I think having the focus, but also having to learn that it is not for me. If I can fall once, I don't know what will happen if I did more than what I just did. So I think that was a very quick for him to learn that you might actually next time roll if you don't be careful. So he stayed away from it and just kept it business. Yeah.
I think it was a wise decision to steer away from alcohol. Because many who have done, and especially those who fail to take control, to remain in control and allow the alcohol to take control, they actually lose out on most of their opportunities. They give you a job and you can't sustain it. You think you have to come in when you are tipsy to be able to decide on a particular direction. So alcohol has turned out to be a big, to be disastrous to many lives, and me inclusive. Yes. So when I say that he was wise, I'm saying it from a very practical experience, that whoever steers away from alcohol has found wisdom, and let him keep there, or let them keep there, because it can be very, very detrimental.
I'm tempted to ask some more questions. However, we have to remember our purpose for being here is a focused
journey.
A focused journey.
Focused.
So I need to stay focused on the book. Please don't derail me. And in line with his focus, he got his first degree, a Bachelor of Social Science, and he actually got this degree when when President Amin had just taken power and was giving oversight to the nation, and it was actually part of the very first graduation ceremony where Amin presided over, which was something that was really, really interesting at that time. Something that I also wanted to say that happened that was kind of shocking when he talked about, at the back of the book, when it says, full of tragedies and seemingly insurmountable difficulties. Now let's talk about some of the difficulties that he went through. The time that he was arrested. Frank, what would you have to say about that? Let me just read one of the points where they talk about beating him. Page 66, this is his account. He says, on the second night, however, they again took me out and they battered me, just as if they were beating a snake. Such a beating.
You see, during those days, many people who were in such seemingly privileged places also had their challenges. They were a target of many people who did not have enough, or thought they didn't have enough. And so many people of his caliber suffered a lot at the hands of lawless leaders at the time. But you can see that regardless of the beatings, regardless of the torture, he came out and was able to continue with his normal life. Which is a picture that paints about the fact that, in this life we may go through so many challenges. And many of us have not even been beaten. But we so say we are so burdened, and many of us end up leaving this country, running out, going to the Arab world, going to so many other areas where we end up even suffering more.
True.
But this professor suffered beatings in his country and never at any one time thought of leaving and running away and going to exile to be able to find a better life.
Yeah.
Because usually if you think that next door is a better life and you forget and you fail to work on where you were to transform your surrounding, chances are high that you might find it even worse on the other side. So I take a great lesson from what happened to him, and that even then he chose to stay in Uganda and make Uganda a better place. And later you can see, as people get to read on, they will see that he actually achieved quite a lot from an environment that seemed too harsh, that wanted him for dead.
Yeah.
Yes.
Now,
and what amazes me is that night, after that battle, the next night, the person who hit him was his village mate and hit him to kill on his head. And later on they met and he did not extend anger or bitterness. He moved on with his life. No, and he met in church. You can imagine, you're praising the Lord, yet you're the one who beat me up. And so, but what am I trying to say is that he looked at the positivity of life and not the negative. And that comes down to a point that we will go through so much, and the least expected people that you think should be helping you are the ones who are going to hammer you. The question is, what are you looking at, the hammer or the positivity of where you're going, the focus? You keep the focus. No wonder he called it focused journey. Yeah.
The part that's very interesting is how even after that particular point, he still talks about that was not the first and only time that he was arrested and beaten up. And it wasn't the only time that he experienced hardship.
There are quite a lot of movie scenes.
I think if he was my father and he said Bananga I suffered, I would find it hard to believe until I read this book. Exactly. Because I would be like, okay, this is really serious. But one of the things that also really stood out for me was still in line with his work. I'm conflicted whether to talk about that now or to talk about his love life as after coming out of this confinement, he actually started to realize there's a woman of great substance.
Oh, yeah.
Should we first go to the lighter side, then go back to the painful side? I don't know which one to do first.
Well, the fruits of pain.
So we should go to the good.
There's always a, what? They call it what? Silver lining.
The silver lining.
There's like a silver lining in every grave.
Yeah.
So
we talk about that.
I think
okay, fine. So let me ask you, he talks about his roadmap to marriage, and he said when he came out of the prison and he had no companion except his mother and a few relatives who would be with him, on page 69 he said, to my surprise, a group of young university ladies led by Christine Rebecca Nadamba, put all three names, get crushed and ventured to visit me at Dag. That name there, let's leave a dash because I will bite my tongue saying it, hall of residence for postgraduate students in Macquarie University for prayers. And that is the first mention of someone coming into his life. Among the girls was Christine Rebecca Nadamba. She was not a fast mover. Since she was not a fast mover, our relationship progressed very slowly. However, on return, with everything, she did not abandon him. Because he says, however, on return from Naguru, all abandoned me except Christine Rebecca Nadamba. Frank, you said you had many relationships a few minutes ago. Would you like to comment about finding a wife?
If your heart is roaming, and the time is getting due for you to settle for a home, then you start, your antennas go up to start testing seriousness. So if Betty comes and then says, hi Timothy, hi Frank, and then tomorrow her phone is off.
You just know that Betty has moved on.
No, my phone is off. Battery or something, give a benefit of doubt.
For this particular one, he made sure that, Kisamba was well. He should not stop at praying for him, but he brought along others to beef up the prayers.
Let us move over to the lady's opinion.
So that was point enough to say, I think I'm seeing light. So.
First of all, the professor need to think about this then. You know when you're facing problems, that is when you begin to think straighter. This guy, when he was in prison, he was already thinking about this. And he knew, when I get out, I only have my mother. But now, I need someone who is going to be closer than my mother. When he got out, signals were very sharp. And when Rebecca came, even if she didn't stay longer, he would pursue. My feeling is, even if she didn't, her network were loose, he would pursue. But anyway, thank God, maybe for a goodwill, she was around, and always there will be that person, by the way. There will always be that person that will always be around in the hard times. I hear a lot of guys like to say that money, good times attract the women you want, and then the bad times attract the women you need, the woman you need. So that time, he needed somebody who's going to be there and pray with them and encourage him. And especially the fact that a lot of people were looking at him as a rebel, as someone who's bad, because why they arrested him was an accusation, and everyone had believed the accusation. And this lady trusted him even in that accusation. So true. Yeah, I mean, why would you leave someone like that?
Anyway, on the topic of weddings, our president talked about scientific weddings a while back, and one of the things that he talked about is plan for small weddings. But now here is the funniest thing. Listen to the situation that existed back in the day. He said, when he was talking about preparations for the wedding, he said all efforts were directed to the wedding. I recall I had to book the hall and drinks for 6 months in advance. Imagine 6 months in advance you're looking for drinks. And not that there were many people marrying then, but there were no commodities. It's not that you don't have friends, it's that there are no items, there are no drinks. He said, it took me over 3 months just to get 10 crates of beer and 20 crates of soda. That was the reality of 1975. But then something that happened to them that happens all too often to young marrieds is that all their bridal gifts were stolen.
It does. It does happen. Tell me more.
I've had
So I
out of
can
about
protect
6
mine.
of my friends, out of 6
So I
of
can
my
be
friends, they
careful
have had
about
that
mine.
experience. But he said, on getting married, we received many gifts. The house became warm and full. One night when we were soundly asleep after properly locking all doors, thieves who seemed to know the structure of the house sneaked through the window of the bathroom and collected all the property they could lay their hands on. And they even stole the Muchara's wedding dress. Anyway. But then the beauty of that is that out of this relationship there came out a wonderful, wonderful family. And the family actually talks a little bit more about their father and his journey. Maybe we can just jump to that briefly. What are some of the things that stood out for you from some of the stories told by the children?
I think for me it was when one of the daughters finished school and they were not seeing signs of somebody coming through, you know. And then the father thought that he should take responsibility to help the daughter get somebody. And guess what he did? He got her transcript, my transcript, and gave it to some guy. And then the guy comes home, and guess what he's showing me? My transcript. Where the hell did you find my transcript?
The father was doing he was trying to make sure that he was bringing the CV, for lack of a better word.
So he has to know how I performed.
I'm joking anyway.
But what I'm trying to say is that I think while he thought that this was a good move, I think it was an old-fashioned move that it was not for that time of the daughter. Remember, the daughter was not educated here, was educated from overseas, and now my dad is playing this move on me, like I don't know how to see a guy I like, and bam, it didn't work out, but and the father had to explain and stuff like that. I think for me that was, it felt like it was a good venture for the father and the mother, but I think it was also over-ambitious venture for him to do that, really.
Anything that stood out for you from one of the testimonies of the children?
Actually, that story too stood out for me because of the way he tried to, fill that gap. And to me now, the challenge is to the parents. The parent will always feel like, that the child has grown up enough, grown to a level where they should make a home and a family. But I think the times have changed, and so parents can no longer really move to do such a thing for their children to do matchmaking. I don't think it's still standing out currently. Right. But of course, at the time, it shows you a parent will always be a parent. Yeah. Even where they clearly their time or their authority ends, they will still want to show that,
Yes. But I'm your father. I want to take care of you. I want to be there for you.
All right. So thank you, Frank. But right now, our time is fast spent, and we have to come to an end. But next week, we'll be going through a focus journey once again. The life of Professor Kisamba Mugerwa and his many strides on his journey. We'll be looking at a bit about his political career, some of the other challenges and decisions that he took, the battle as a father and also as a husband to provide for your family, and also all the elements that intertwine in between. Please be sure to tune in next time on the next episode.
As Kenneth shared, we are gathered here simply to formally launch the book written by Professor Kisamba Mugerwa entitled A Focused Journey. This book is very interesting. And he has not only written that, but he has more. He has two more. He has one entitled Luero Triangle in the Limelight. And then we have development planning and human development. And so I always told him that all these are very important books and everyone should look forward to reading these books. But I always told him that this book stands out of all.
When I found the Lord too much, and I think that's where the difference between me and Kisamba started. that I thought the load was too much and left. But Kisamba Mugerwa has never found that load too much. I've always been amazed over the years how he has combined public office and academia. So my first point is to talk about Kisamba Mugerwa, the man. Not the Ruchanzi, the man. Kisamba Mugerwa, the man. And start by, first of all, thanking him. One, for putting aside time and writing these 4 books. I think you should join me in expressing our thanks.
Again, to congratulate Professor Kisamba Mugerwa for having, in a space of few months, not years, produced 3 books for Ugandans to be educated about. The one on Luero, Triangle, in the limelight, development planning and human development, and his own journey. I'm a writer, I'm an author, but I'm not, I can't really compete with him. 3 books I'm telling you, I don't know how many of you have ever written a book. Some of you have written some piece of paper, you can call essays, and so on and so forth. But of course, you see other people like, before you become a doctor, and Dr. Kaseke is, he has written almost a book, because he did dissertation. It's actually a book. So those one, and of course, my fellow professor and but I want to assure you it's not easy. Because if you write a letter, or even some of you when you're applying for jobs, how to apply for a job, some of you are going to be helped. So writing is not easy. So I congratulate you very much indeed.
Then he takes us through all the journey, how he suffered, the difficulties, so that when he comes to write a book, development planning and human development, you just leaves you wondering, is this the man who used to moonlight as a taxi driver? And then he suffered, he was arrested, he was clobbered, he was beaten, all that journey. And then we see him now becoming a development expert. And the skit you just see is about the crisis and the challenge of development in African countries, and specifically Uganda. In Uganda, development is there. people are working day and night, but it doesn't seem to be well implemented. It doesn't seem to trickle down. When you go through this book, you realize something strongly comes out. One point that comes out that I want to point out is most organized groups, most organized people, and are better planners. They plan better. If you are organized, if you are an organized group, or organized people, an organized nation, you plan better. But then how do you get there? To get there, you must have a high level of organization.
So what I'm saying, I'm not saying that I was focused to know what I'm going to be. But the message I'm trying to convey to you, that whatever stage you reach, and you have an opportunity, please, be committed. Be committed to that assignment. It is that I will succeed. And that's what I'm saying, focus. I'm given something. In one time I said that if you give me a ministry of collecting ashes in this country, ashes food, I can make it beautiful and people like it. I was appointed a minister of state for the World Triangle. When you read this, you will find it was the middle of a financial year. And you know what it means. There was no budget for that ministry. And I was given an office where there was a cobweb. And my secretary was sitting 4 rooms away from where I was sitting. And there was no car for me, but I had, as an MP, I had been allocated a pickup, personal, which I used for a whole 6 months before they bought me a ministerial car. But 2 years before I left the World Triangle, those who went to Bush, they were saying, why this man becomes a minister in a World Triangle and he had never been to Bush? And because of what I had accumulated in the ministry. And when I left, they shattered it. I'm telling you, there is a record for this. So, I'm saying that you need to be focused in whatever you are doing. Be committed. Do it. I think one can be a good Christian and be a governor, a deputy governor. One can be a good Christian and be a driver and be a shopkeeper. You don't need to be like a chameleon to change colors. Today you were a robber, tomorrow you were a thief, then to another day you will frauders. You can be a Christian. I'm saying so. And in this book I'm saying God fearing has helped you.
Ladies and gentlemen, please don't forget to each and every is also able. We are going to out and at count of 3, ladies and gentlemen, we are going to do justice to this cake. But Mr. Mugerwa, given the picture is edible. Yes. And at count of 3, 2, 1, and 0. Yes. Congratulations, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you so much for coming. Please stay seated. The cake is going to find you at your respective places. And each one of you is going to have a taste of this sumptuous cake. Thank you so much for coming again, and we look forward to having you grace more and more in